because of what President Trump did in that tax cut, where he pushed Republicans on the Hill to actually rip out the individual mandate, which is sort of the guts of the Affordable Care Act, right? So now this federal judge in Texas says it's now unconstitutional without the individual mandate. But the big question moving forward is, what do you replace it with?
I don't trust him. I'm worried. I've been saying for a long time I'm worried because Republicans have not done their due diligence on this in the past. And, you know, people on the right keep saying, you have to have a plan. You can't just repeal something and not have a proposal, because people will lose their health insurance if this goes south. People will expect someone to take charge. Somebody's got to be the adult in the room. You would think Republicans had figured out it should be them at this point. Let's hope they did.
Well, there's not a lot of rationality around health care and the debate over that. But last night, President Trump immediately jumping on this news and talking about, the opportunity that could be presented. Listen to the president last night.
I believe we're going to get really good health care. Exciting things happened over the last 24 hours. And if everybody's smart, because we have a lot of Democrats here tonight, and I'm very happy about that, people don't realize it. I have a lot of friends who are Democrats. And we have Democrats here, and if the Republicans and the Democrats get together, we are going to end up with incredible health care, which is the way it should have been from day one, and it's going to happen. It now has a chance to happen.
So he's talking about trying to bring Democrats and Republicans together. I think Jedediah is right that pressure's on Republicans.
Sure is.
Responsibility to govern, but Democrats are about to take over the House. They have a responsibility to govern as well, and they also are the ones who crafted Obamacare to begin with and sold it on lies. Keep your doctor, keep your plan. And now it's falling apart, and they're saying, oh, it's all on Donald Trump. Hang on a second. What is the Democratic plan? We know it's Medicare for all. Well, guess what? The Wall Street Journal, when I was covering Bernie Sanders in 2016, they looked at it and they said it was going to cost about $15 trillion. That's trillion
that's all?
with a T to pay for Medicare
Right.
for all. You never hear that price tag from Democrats. And secondly, the Wall Street Journal, when they looked at it, also said Sanders had a plan to raise taxes. How much was he going to raise it? He was going to raise your taxes by 34% to pay for Medicare for all and other socialist plans.
Yeah.
So you're going to see your taxes go like this, and you're going to see federal spending go like this if you have Medicare for all. So the Democrats' plan is shaky, but the Republicans do, as you say, have to come up with something. And there seems to be a lot of ground in between a failing Obamacare and $15 trillion for Medicare for all. It seems like in the middle there, the Republicans can find a space.
Ed, I don't know what to say because I agree with everything you just said.
That's a scary situation.
It is true.
But
you know what it is? The reason why it won't happen is Nancy Pelosi's job in 2019 is to try to take on Trump and tee him up for whoever the 2020 candidate is to run against him. So there's almost no ground where they'll want to work together constructively if there is common ground. Jedediah, you pointed out properly last hour on health care. Not a lot of common ground between Republicans and Democrats. I don't see where this happens.
Not a lot of common ground on anything, but particularly on issues where you have to determine what the role of government should be. The folks on the left want a big role for government. And it's interesting. They never tell you what things cost, and they also never tell you how they plan to pay for them. I remember Ocasio-Cortez saying, oh, you just pay for it. No, you don't just pay for it. The money has to come from somewhere. It doesn't grow on trees. And, of course, she was making the argument that it would be more cost-effective. It will not be more cost-effective. And, I urge Republicans all the time, don't just talk about the cost. Talk about what happens when the government gets involved and controls your health care. You are now no longer the person that's in the driver's seat. Somebody else is making those decisions for you. Quality of care goes down. These are important things to talk about and then say, you know what? This is what will happen if the government's running the show, but here's our alternative plan for what happens when we put you in charge of the show.
Just mint some trillion-dollar coins.
Just do that.
So, look, the president said last night, as Pete mentioned, let's find common ground in 2019 on health care. That's going to be a big priority for both parties. But in the meantime, they've got another priority in terms of coming together, and that's avoiding a partial government shutdown, which will happen at the end of this week without some sort of a deal. The president holding firm on what he wants, which is $5 billion for the wall. That's really just a down payment. That's not the whole deal. That's just part of it, Jedediah. And you saw Democrats in the Oval Office. What got lost in the, Donald Trump draws the line in the sand, is that Democrats were basically saying, we're not giving you anything. They were not giving an inch.
No, Chuck Schumer's not doing it. Nancy Pelosi's not doing it. They're not prioritizing this border wall at all. Not at all. And I think it's important for President Trump to stand firm on this because, as I've said many times, this is a key issue for him. He ran on this. He talked about the wall a lot. One of the reasons he won was because people felt that he was going to be not only passionate about the issue, but he was going to have the follow-through to actually
get it done. Well, did you know, though, this is going to be Armageddon?
Let's send Pete to our wall.
Can we break it down? Ed did it so well the other day, last weekend. I got jealous, so I said, can I have my turn just one time?
He has to use the wall now.
Ed's so good at it, I got to try every once in a while. The reality is we're hearing, you guys, that this shutdown is going to be Armageddon. The whole government, it's terrible, we can't do it. Well, let's get to the facts about what a government shutdown might mean. How many shutdowns have we actually had in each administration? Look here, so I'm not good at math, but this basic bar graph tells me that we're not outside of the median here of the amount of shutdowns that have occurred. Look at Ronald Reagan. I mean, this is a guy who stood for less government, took on, folks, he had 8 government shutdowns during his presidency. We've got less than 1 here for President Trump, Obama, Bush, 0. So we're not outside the norm at all at this point as far as shutdowns. Now, this is a really important aspect of this. We talk about shutdown. It's not a full shutdown. Most of the government is already funded, to include these departments: the Defense Department, the VA, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Of course, as you, Ed, pointed out yesterday, the folks in Congress take care of themselves before they take care of everybody else. So the troops are going to get paid, the vets are going to get paid, Social Security checks are going to happen, airports are going to be open, TSA is going to be working. Ultimately, most of the government funded and not shut down. So this is a small portion. Estimated that 400,000 essential employees would work without pay. Now, that means they won't get pay immediately, but they will get back pay. They're going to get paid. Inconvenience for them. The question is it worth getting the wall and border security as an exchange? Kellyanne Conway says, well, the U.S. needs to spend that money to protect our border, and we'll see what happens with this showdown. Listen.
And this is a president who knows that we as a nation have been spending billions of dollars over decades helping other nations protect their own sovereign borders. It's high time we do it here. He also knows that there were 26 Democrats in the Senate who voted for the Secure Fences Act in 2006. And they were none other, let me just highlight a few for you, Senator Joe Biden, Senator Barack Obama, Senator Chuck Schumer, and Senator ding, 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 Hillary Clinton. So what's happened on the border since the 2006 Secure Fences Act was voted on? It got worse.
She's right, because Democrats like Barack Obama and others, they were supporting a wall way back when.
That's right. And, you know, you did that great presentation before about the shutdown. Phenomenal job. But you know what? Republican politicians need to do that, too, because Democratic politicians come out with the scare tactics every time. Republicans don't care about your health care. But what you know, it doesn't, this stuff doesn't get pointed out. And the talking point of government shutdown Armageddon does get thrown out there. And people don't realize you're talking about our border security. You're talking about threat to our national security. That has to be prioritized. There's never going to be a moment when everybody wants to get on board and do it unless you force it. Now's the time to force it.
And you need to keep playing those hits. Biden, Obama, Schumer, Hillary, all for the wall in 2006. It's a great point. I'll repeat it because great points are worth repeating. If the problem's getting worse, why are you now not for it?
Yep.
It has gotten worse. This president's trying to do what he can. The caravan it's a sharp moment. We talked about health care to begin with. 2020 looks like it's going to be Democrats wanting to talk about health care because there will be no solution, and President Trump wanting to talk about sovereignty and border security. And we'll see where voters are.
Well,
we'll see.
I'm not sure that Pete and I have ever agreed that much. So.
I know. I'm a little frightened as we turn to the headlines.
But you know what?
I'm a little scared.
I'm frightened of Governor Mike Huckabee.
What does he have?
What does he have?
All right, some headlines for you. A police officer is hit and killed while responding to a crash on a major highway. Officer Jason Quick was hit while crossing I-95 in North Carolina. He died at the hospital.
Officer Quick was an outstanding officer. He loved his job. Great attitude, just a good person.
Quick was on the force for a year and a half. It is unclear if the driver involved will be charged. Former FBI Director James Comey returning to Capitol Hill tomorrow to answer more questions. Former Assistant U.S. Attorney Andy McCarthy joined us earlier. He weighed in on the 2017 meeting between Comey and President Trump regarding the anti-Trump dossier.
If you're briefing the president on a national security investigation in counterintelligence, when the whole point of counterintelligence is to inform the president so he can perform his mission, why would you play close to the vest with the facts on that?
Comey struggled to answer many questions during his first interview earlier this month. He said, I don't know, or I can't recall, nearly 250 times. A rare war of words between the UK's former Prime Minister and the current one over Brexit. Tony Blair is firing back at Theresa May. She accused him of undermining the UK by calling for a new Brexit referendum. Blair is calling May irresponsible for trying to force members of Parliament to back her Brexit deal. First Lady Melania Trump makes a stunning grand entrance at the White House Congressional Ball.
Welcome to the White House. Enjoy the evening. Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year.
The First Lady glowing in a white shimmering gown. President Trump addressed the crowd celebrating his 2 years in office. And those are your headlines.
Huh, maybe one of the fashion magazines will put her on the cover.
She is my favorite fashion icon. I'm telling you, man, if I could steal a wardrobe, that would be it.
The double standard is
It's true.
so incredible.
Stunning.
All right. Well, we will get to that later as well. Speaking of the border wall, which we were talking about, angel parents rallying for tougher security at the border. Our next guest is quite personal. She is a legal immigrant, and her only son was murdered by an illegal immigrant. Her message for lawmakers in Washington ahead of that government shutdown showdown, that message is coming up next.
Maybe we should listen to them. Plus, a former Green Beret now charged in the killing of a suspected Taliban bomb maker years after it took place. And now this hero could face the death penalty. His attorney joins us live coming up.
Name for those whose loved ones were killed by illegal aliens. They held a rally at the U.S.-Mexico border on Friday to show their support for tougher border security measures.
Our next guest, an angel mom who immigrated legally from Hungary, lost her only son, Ronald, when he was shot by an illegal immigrant in 2002. Agnes Givney organized the rally, and she joins us now. Agnes, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so sorry about the loss of your son. Can you just tell us a little bit about your story and about your son?
Thank you so much. My family legally, we left Hungary as refugees. We were in a refugee camp for about 10 months, and we legally immigrated to the United States. We followed the law. My son was murdered by a previously deported illegal alien who is due to be released in April of 2020. This insanity needs to stop because we do not need more criminals out in our street and living in California being a sanctuary state. I wonder if Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer would like to take in the murderer so that he can live next to them. Which one of their family members would they sacrifice? Enough of sacrificing our children, our citizens, to protect illegal aliens who are breaking our laws by invading our country.
Yeah, and you know, Agnes, we see your T-shirt there saying permanent family separation, of course, with a picture of your son. We've heard so much about family separation at the border, and this obviously is searing for you and many other angel moms who have to deal with this. So talk a little bit more. You mentioned Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They had this big showdown with the president in the Oval Office a few days back, and the president frankly said he'd be willing to shut the government down if it means fighting for more border security money. And you see, we're showing the video now of that back and forth. It got quite heated. What was your reaction to the president standing up to these two Democrats? But what's also your message to Pelosi and Schumer?
I am so proud of President Trump. He's trying to keep the promise of his campaign to build the border wall. A country without a border is not a country. It just endangers us. When I saw that press release, program, I mean the Oval Office, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, you can see the animosity of Pelosi, the rehearsed talk that she gave, and Chuck Schumer condescending, disrespectful. And I am so proud that President Trump stood up and said he would take full responsibility for shutting the government and the border down. And I want to say to the Americans are very proud of our president, and no DACA, no amnesty in this deal either. If they are not willing to work with the president, then we need to shut the government down. And I'm sorry for those that are being affected, but look at my family and thousands of other angel families. They are permanently separated and permanently affected by the lack of keeping sovereignty of our nation.
Well, Agnes, thank you so much for being here. Obviously, so much appreciate your perspective. So sorry for your loss, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Agnes. Meanwhile, another tough story. A former Green Beret could now face the death penalty. That's right, the death penalty after admitted to killing a Taliban bomb maker. He went after the bad guys.
Did you kill the Taliban bomb maker?
Yes.
His attorney says the Army is betraying his client. Well, he joins us live next.
Welcome back. A serious story here. A decorated war hero who fought for our country overseas, now a suspected war criminal. Former Green Beret Major Matt Goldstein could face the death penalty from our own government after he admitted to killing a Taliban bomb maker while overseas in 2010, a confession he made right here on Fox News.
Did you kill the Taliban bomb maker?
Yes.
Willingly offered up these details.
Right.
The Army reopened the case after that interview and after he interviewed with the CIA, now officially charging Goldstein with murder. Goldstein.
Well, Matt's one of the finest people I've ever met. You know, he's been in the Army now for almost 16 years. He's a West Point graduate. He served as an infantry officer early on in his career and then moved into the Special Forces community. And that's where he's served, clear up until around 2015.
You know, I was reminded yesterday, I actually met Matt Goldstein in Duncan Hunter's office a couple of years ago. Quality individual, no doubt. He received the Silver Star for tracking down a sniper targeting his troops, assisted a wounded Afghan soldier, and helped coordinate multiple airstrikes. He was recommended to be upgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross. But all of that wiped away because he's accused of killing a Taliban bomb maker who had killed Americans in the process. He admitted to that. He says he did it. Talk to us about his defense of that action.
Yeah, well, let me tell you two things. First, about the actions you just described. Matt is one of the most humble people I've ever met, and he has a chest full of awards for valor. The incident that you just described is a battle where his patrol, it was approximately a 50-man plus patrol, was under attack by a superior enemy force. And Matt engaged the enemy directly, calling in indirect fire, calling in air support, deploying Gustav recoilless rifle rockets at the enemy. It was a heroic battle. And Matt was recognized for that, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the allegations that have been made against him, yet the Army, with no due process rights afforded to Matt, rescinded the Distinguished Service Cross that the Secretary of the Army had actually signed and then revoked a Silver Star Medal. Again, it had nothing to do with the allegations that are facing him today. With respect to what's facing him today, what's super important to understand is the Army's known about these allegations, these actions that Matt described to the Central Intelligence Agency when he was being highly recruited in 2011. They've known about it since 2011. And they were investigated thoroughly, and they were disposed of through an administrative process in 2015, 3 years ago. And at the conclusion of that process, Matt was being processed administratively for discharge, and concurrently he was being processed for medical retirement. And then it was after the Bret Baier interview that they did reopen the investigation. But what's really important for the public to understand is there was nothing described in Bret's interview that the Army didn't have back in 2011.
Yeah. So, Phil, why? And here's a statement from the U.S. Army Special Operations Command spokesman. They say Major Matthew Goldstein's immediate commander has determined that sufficient evidence exists to warrant the preferral of charges against them. Okay, so if they knew it, and if the interview didn't reveal anything new, and this was a closed case, why are they going out of their way to go after what can only be described as an American hero?
Well, I mean, that's a question you'd have to ask them. I mean, the prosecutor in this case has intimated to me that they have new evidence, but this allegation happened in 2010, in February of 2010. The Army became aware of it in 2011, and it's been investigated the entire time. What new evidence could there possibly be from 2010? And that's the question that they'll have to answer.
Absolutely. We're going to follow this case. But talk to me about the larger double standard. We fight an enemy that hides in the shadows, hides behind women and children and civilian shields. Yet when we're faced with catch and release policies where we're releasing people back into the population who will kill Americans, somehow we're not allowed to be vicious in our pursuit of the enemy. Talk to the challenges guys like Matt face on the battlefield.
Well, it is a constant challenge for guys like Matt on the battlefield, and this isn't the first time that this has ever come up in representing military members in court proceedings, or especially those in the special operations community. I think what's really important to understand, again, is that there are, in Matt's particular case, there were 3 different sets of rules that he was following: ISAF rules, U.S. Forces Afghanistan rules, and Special Operations Task Force rules. So he had 3 different masters that he was serving at the time. He wasn't allowed to keep people detained for more than 24 hours.
Yeah.
And another very important piece for the public to understand is when this investigation started by the Criminal Investigation Division of the Army, a narrative was put out in the very early stages that Matt released this Taliban bomb maker, walked him back to the house that he was operating on, and assassinated him in his house. And that was never said. And the Army repeated that narrative consistently through that investigation until Matt's administrative hearing, when they had a CID agent, a Criminal Investigation Division agent, on the witness stand under oath and admitted that that was a lie in the investigation, and they never corrected it.
It seems like they go after these guys. There's another rule out there: bring as many of your guys, Americans, home as you can and kill as many bad guys in the process. Turns out that's how you win wars. Phil Stackhouse, thank you very much for representing Matt Goldstein.
And if I can just say this one additional thing,
Yes.
Matt appreciates so much the outpouring of support that he's received from his former teammates and from the public. And we have an outstanding charity group that is helping him called United American Patriots. And it's an organization like that that allows us to help, heroes like Matt.
United American Patriots. Well, appreciate that. We reached out to the Defense Department. We have not heard back. We're also going to have Matthew Goldstein's wife on later on in the program. Thank you very much, Phil, for joining us. Whew. All right. Well, still ahead, Ken Starr joins us live. He knows a little bit about special counsels. Plus, how...
Knowles is the host of the Michael Knowles Show, and you see something like that. They're right. Sometimes comedy is dead on. And they're saying, why in the world would someone risk their career to do the Oscars?
This is exactly right. SNL got it exactly right. Typically, not the funniest thing in the world, but they made the point nonetheless, which is this is the most thankless job in Hollywood. There is nothing to gain whatsoever. It's a worse job than giving the response at the State of the Union address. What Kevin Hart showed us is that this new standard now is that if you have ever made a gay joke in your career, you are disqualified from hosting the Oscars. This disqualifies statistically 100% of living comedians. So the new idea is that they're going to replace the Oscar host with a rotating panel of performers. And this really is the typical cowardice of our age. We want to be everything to everybody. We want to be completely inoffensive. We don't want to assert anything. And this is where the PC left thrives. The left has always disdained the individual. They've always exalted the collective. And so now you see why millennials, for instance, won't say, I think that, or I believe that. They'll only say, I feel like. It's why the left encourages us to say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. They're replacing the particular and the individual with this bland, inoffensive collective, which is completely unentertaining. And, the Oscars have suffered a ratings complete decline over the last few years. And now they're promising us it's going to be even less entertaining. Oh, I can't wait to tune in. I'm sure we're all just going to be sitting there with our popcorn.
Michael, you mentioned millennials, and another topic came across my mind today where millennials are now taking adulting classes. It's becoming a new trend. They learn basic skills like sewing, cooking, how to deal with relationships. We know they're living at home longer. What is it with this delayed adolescence, and what is it doing to our society?
Well, I would worry about speaking ill of my fellow millennials, but statistically none of them are awake this early to be watching this program, so it's okay. Adulting is the phrase that millennials use to congratulate themselves for not behaving like children. And I'm actually all for the adulting classes. This is very important. According to the U.S. Census, more than a third of young Americans, 18 to 34, are living in their childhood homes with their parents. This number is way up since 2005. We now know that the majority of American millennials have relied on their parents for financial assistance since turning 21. More millennials are living with their parents than are living with spouses or are living with roommates. And this is because their teachers and their parents have failed them. They have failed millennials.
You're exactly right. Listen, I don't even blame the millennials. I blame the boomers. I blame the parents who they confuse the fact that parenting is about child rearing. It's about raising up citizens and kids and teaching them instead of putting them in front of an iPad and saying good luck.
This is exactly right. You now have an entire generation. Maybe the parents, maybe the teachers meant well, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So you have this completely ignorant, completely helpless generation that not only can't balance a checkbook, they don't even know that they should go out and get a full-time job. They can't cook, they can't sew, they can't do much of anything at all. This doesn't help society. This doesn't help the millennials themselves. So if they've got to learn how to adult at the age of 35, that's a little pathetic, but better late than never.
I got to sit in on one of these classes, Michael. Oh, man. The statue of Gandhi, accusing him of being a racist.
Oh, boy.
The statue was removed in the middle of the night this week amid protests from students and faculty at the University of Ghana. Protesters say Gandhi considered Indians superior to black Africans. Gandhi is best known as an Indian activist who led peaceful protests against British rule. And this morning, the New York Times is asking, what holiday lights display are you? And revealing what different displays say about their owners. If you like those small, white,
what's better than the
lights,
New York Times than the International New Yorker?
it means you're a traditionalist. I guess I'm a traditionalist. If you're an icicle lights person, you know what you like and you commit to it. And if you like all the color and all the chaos, you're someone who knows everyone in the neighborhood and likes hosting. We want to know which light display you are. So email us, friends@foxnews.com, and let us know. Let us know.
Bob Mueller's got a light display.
Bob Mueller pops up. Who knows what it is?
That's
You
actually
never know.
pretty cool, though.
The
'cause I
Russians
do.
are everywhere.
It's true, though. I like those tiny little white lights, and I am kind of a traditionalist. So
I
maybe
like
there's
colors.
something
I
to
like
it.
colors, I think.
I like
You
colors.
like chaos.
Yeah, chaos.
But not too much. What about, Ed's got socks.
I've got a red
Oh,
one
yeah.
and a green one.
Chaos going down right
My
here.
buddy owns, what's it called, Gentleman's Corner down in North Carolina and Palm Beach, Florida. He sent me these socks saying
Those
that
are
they
pretty
would work
cool.
on Fox and Friends. I don't know. Tough.
Of course
Are
they
they
work on
working or
Fox and
not?
Friends.
I think they work.
You're a chaos guy.
One
there's no
green,
doubt.
one red.
Yep.
All right. Meanwhile, Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe now 17 months old.
Oh, there he is.
Former independent counsel Ken Starr says there's still no evidence of collusion. He joins us live next.
Plus, do you have bacon?
Oh, Pete's favorite segment. It's going to be about. And while it spurred an onslaught of sidebar investigations, ultimately there is still no evidence of collusion. Our next guest, of course, served as the independent counsel investigating then-President Bill Clinton. Judge Ken Starr joins us now to weigh in. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Ed.
Well, it's good to see you, and we have this sort of graphic for our wall of all of the investigations that have sprouted up, some because of the special counsel, some because of the prosecutors here in New York. And if you look at that graphic, it's astounding. Mueller probing collusion, obstruction of justice, wrongdoing in contacts between the Trump camp and Russia. Then you go on the line, New York U.S. Attorney, Democrats in Maryland, D.C., New York tax official. It's on and on and on, Judge, and yet there seems to me there's still no evidence of collusion, which is where this all started.
Right. It's exactly right. It all started that way. You never know where an investigation is going to go. During our investigation, we had add-ons such as the travel office, the FBI files, which are incredibly right in saying, look at all these different investigations, and yet there is no public evidence of collusion. So it all began in May, a year ago, going on now 2 years. The takeaways are this. The Russians really interfered really badly. There's no evidence that the election was affected by that. I think it was wasted money. We've certainly had to devote an enormous amount of time and energy to see if there was any collusion or conspiracy with the Trump organization, but there's just been no evidence of it.
But now, my understanding is that you believe that while there's no evidence of collusion, that what the New York prosecutors have found about campaign finance, we had a former federal election campaign official on yesterday saying he doesn't really think those charges are serious. I understand you believe the opposite.
Well, I think we've got to stay tuned. I don't want to jump to conclusions, Ed, and I'm not jumping to any conclusions. But when I read the documents, some of which have been on file for several months, including the National Enquirer parent organization, I think stay tuned. Let's don't, again, jump to conclusions one way or the other. But you're right. There's no evidence right now that suggests that there was a campaign finance violation involved involving the president himself. I'm just saying, keep an open mind. Let's follow the facts. Let's get the facts out as quickly as possible.
You actually raise a really important point about amid all of these investigations, which let's stick to the facts. Let's not jump to conclusions. But Judge, you know better than I. You've faced this before. Watch this clip of Democrats and others in the media saying, let's jump right to conclusions.
A case has been built this week that the president was not legitimately elected.
I believe that this president is dangerous. I think he has undermined our democracy. I believe that he certainly qualifies for impeachment.
The writing's on the wall, the walls are closing in, and this is the beginning of the end for the Trump administration.
Boy, I can't even count how many times I've heard the walls are closing in, this is the beginning of the end. The president hasn't even been charged with anything, and now he's illegitimate, he's dangerous, he's all the rest.
I think it's unfortunate rhetoric, and there's no justification for it at all. The idea of illegitimacy is itself a profoundly illegitimate point. We have elections in this country. We have a process. Let's allow these processes to work. And starting to hear these voices, and it's kind of a rising tide, a cacophony of illegitimacy, is, I think, unfair to our democratic institutions. They accuse the president of tearing down democratic institutions, and yet the political rhetoric is so wildly overheated and exaggerated that I think that corrodes confidence and erodes confidence in our institutions. I say everybody needs to calm down, maybe watch a little bit more football, get ready for Christmas, whatever your holiday is, and just allow the process to work.
You know, that sounds like sound advice. Focus a little bit on football. Focus on the family over Christmas. Judge Starr, we hope you have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for coming in, sir.
And you too, Ed. Thank you.
Meanwhile, a new poll about which Democrats actually have a shot in 2020. It's not good for Hillary. Mike Huckabee will react coming up. He apparently has some dirt on the host as well. We'll get to that. And they're able to sniff out danger. Now bomb-sniffing dogs are in higher demand than ever by U.S. airlines. Well, two of those canines, I met them in the green room. They're here to show off their skills and tell us why they're so in need, especially over the holidays. That's next.
This is Lucy. Lucy and Abby.
Hey, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us. So you train these dogs. Tell us, first of all, what are they capable of?
It's pretty impressive what these dogs are capable of doing. So Lucy, she's trained to find narcotics. She's also a certified tracking dog as well, so missing persons, fleeing suspects. Abby, she's trained to find explosives.
Wow.
And she's also trained to find missing persons or fleeing suspects as well. But I mean, the list goes on. I mean, you can train the dogs to find thumb drives. You can train the dogs to find bed bugs. You can train the dogs to find currency.
Wow.
Human remains.
How long does it take to train them?
It depends on the discipline you're going into. I'd say about 4 to 5 months to get them initially started, but then it's constant training, constant sustainment training after that.
You guys are smart. You gals.
Yeah, and in the green room, you were showing me that when you play with a tennis ball, it's not just play. That gets their mind focused so you can get them ready for the job.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all about the ball for them, and that's what we feel if the dog has a high ball drive, it usually turns into a good working dog. Everything they do is to get that ball as the reward. So when they find something, we reward them with the ball.
Why is the TSA now authorizing private firms to train dogs? Do they not have enough? Are there new requirements? What do we see? Because when I go to the airport in Minneapolis, every time I go, there's now a dog working that line.
Absolutely, and it's mainly to help augment the number of dogs that they have. It's basically there's just not enough dogs to fill in that gap.
Let's see them do it. So how do they work?
All right. Ready to work?
Hey, sit, sir.
Yeah, what are they doing right now? What's going on here?
So what she's doing
is
she's showed a change of behavior, and now she's indicating that the explosives are in this luggage right here.
Wow.
So what did you put in there so that?
So inside that is the explosive petin. Not an actual explosive, it's a synthetic training aid, so there's no bomb actually in this suitcase. But no, it's a training aid that we use to help train the dogs with.
So she's been trained. That was great. She alerted you to the fact that something had changed.
So what we are looking for as handlers, we're looking for that change of behavior.
Right.
And once the dog has a change of behavior, then that knows, all right, the dog is smelling something that it's been trained to detect.
Wow.
And then from there, what the dog will do is it'll have the final response.
Can you check Ed?
They were joking in the break that they were going to drop something in my pocket like bacon so the dogs would attack me.
Yeah, that's
This is what they do.
Do you do that though? do you and then when you test them, do you put stuff in there that they might be drawn to? Like, how do you decide who's going to be a good dog at this and who's not going to be a good dog
Absolutely,
at it?
that's what we could do. We do a lot of different scenarios. At our course, we have a veteran course there where the dogs can come through and do that.
Great work, guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Being
Mike Huckabee says Santa told him about Pete and Ed. So what does he have on them? Find out next.